So, for those of you who have been keeping score at home, you may be aware of the fact that we are having some technical issues. Something we believe to be a problem with the memory card. We hope that it's the memory card. If it's the memory card, that's a whole lot easier on us because then we don't have to spend all the money to get the camera replaced, just the memory card. So until we get that squared away, we're going to continue to do Forthright Currents. We're just going to do Forthright Currents like this. So this gives us an opportunity to still have the conversation with you, for you to still interact with us, and for us to still kind of do what we're doing with Forthright Currents. You'll see we got a nice little pretty background. Here's our banner. For those of you who have been paying attention to the Forthright discussions, you've been hearing us talk about getting said banner, and there it is. So we kind of like this format. We may continue this format for a little bit. Who knows? We may just keep doing it in this format. It's a little bit more intimate, and you can sit back and relax and listen to the dulcet tones of Forthright. Sometimes I get the feeling words are like currency. The more you put out there, the less value they have. And I have to be honest when I tell you I kind of feel that way about equality. Equality seems to be a buzzword, a hot topic nowadays, and there are several places in the world where equality needs to be addressed and talked about. But I feel like equality is being a bit overused, especially in regard to the transgender bathroom debate. Now, I know we here at Forthright have been relatively quiet on this one. That's somewhat for some good reason. I've kind of wanted to see how this thing played out, and now that we're starting to get more information, and now that more people are speaking out, not just Bruce Springsteen and Target, but now the president has thrown his hat into the ring and begun to have a conversation about where we as a society should fall on the transgender bathroom discussion or transgender people at all. Okay, so we need to say this up front. When we're having a discussion about transgendered people, all right, there are two ways I think that you can understand kind of the transgender debate. The first one, which I'm going to say tends to make people a little uncomfortable maybe, but it's something that needs to be put out there, and that is there are people in this world who are legitimately transgendered, okay? This entire debate isn't over just people who say, I just feel like a girl or I just feel like a boy. There are people who are genuinely born hermaphroditic, and their parents are forced to make a difficult choice. In some cases, it works out. They make the choice, and it matches with what the child experiences growing up, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the parents make the wrong call, and it's not necessarily fault of theirs. They have to make a choice, and they make a choice. But in those situations, those people grow up with an incredible crisis of identity. They have been taught to identify themselves as a boy or a girl, and as they grow up, that's just not what they experience. Their body, biologically, physically, is doing other things. And so they're trying to figure out how to navigate that. And in those situations, I think we want to say right up front, that's a very difficult situation to be in. And we, as people, as Christians, need to be gracious with that and understanding with that and seek to understand those people and continue to work with transgendered people because that's a legitimate thing. And we pray for peace in their hearts as many of them go through this time of struggling and trying to figure these things out. So we need to say that up front. However, we also know that that's not always the case. It's not always someone who is born hermaphroditic. Sometimes it's people who just grow up and they go, psychologically, I feel more like the other sex. That seems to be where a lot of the debate is coming in and where a lot of people are sort of going with this discussion. So let's tackle that. All right, so this is our first kind of point of contention. In the first place, I think we want to have a discussion. And it really revolves around what I said earlier in the show when we were talking about equality. I think that word is thrown around too loosely. I think people tend to use the word equality in places where it doesn't fit. And I think the transgender bathroom debate is one of those places where it doesn't fit. No one is telling a transgendered person that they cannot use a public restroom. They're simply saying that you should use the public restroom that is properly assigned to your anatomical sex. All right, so just because you want to go into this bathroom and you're supposed to go into this bathroom, I don't think that's an issue of equality. I think that's something different. If you want to talk about equality, we talk about, women not being paid the same for working the same job that a man does. That's an equality issue. Someone who's told that they can't have certain goods or services because of the color of their skin, that's an equality issue. I don't think this falls into the same category. All right, this is about what restroom you should use according to your anatomical sex. And just because you feel one way and it's not that way, I don't necessarily think that dictates that we're dealing with equality issues. So I think that's maybe the first point, or the first place we need to continue the discussion and maybe just clarify what it is we're actually after. That brings us to the second point. Now, I know that some people are going to say, well, what about the situations where you have a transgendered person who's being forced to enter into the restroom of their anatomical sex and they feel shame? They are made to feel shameful, not because they are necessarily ashamed, but people talk and they whisper and they look at them funny, and we have issues there. I would agree that that's a problem, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed. I just don't know if your proposed solution is actually addressing the problem. To me, it feels more like a Band-Aid, right? You're going to have a situation where someone's going to walk into a restroom and people are going to whisper and snicker and say those sorts of things and be very cruel and mean, and they're not going to understand, and they're going to act out of fear and ignorance. But no matter what restroom they go into, the moment they step out of that restroom, that's all still going to happen from people. Because some people just act out of fear and ignorance and don't try to understand or don't try to communicate with or talk with people or get to know people. I don't see how allowing people to go into whatever restroom they choose is actually solving the problem when it comes to how comfortable they feel in whichever restroom. I really just think it's a Band-Aid. If you want to address the problem, then you have to address people's hearts, and you have to address people's minds, and you have to deal with some of those problems and those issues rather than just allowing a free-for-all in the bathrooms. I just don't think you're solving the problem that you set out to fix. So, Target, Bruce Springsteen, the president, whoever wants to sort of weigh in on this, do you think maybe we've lost our focus and what the real issue is? And maybe this idea of bathrooms should be displaced into a conversation of just, in general, how should we treat other people? I think that's a more productive conversation and maybe gets to maybe some of the real problems that we are seeing here. So I really think the debate has to maybe shift focus to that area of conversation rather than kind of legislation and where you go to the bathroom in a Target. And I think maybe the best place to go with this, at least biblically, is to look at Romans, all right? Romans chapter 12, verses 9 and 10, that says, "Let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good, love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor." And maybe that's where we need to focus. Outdo one another in showing honor. Act honorably toward each other. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to accept or tolerate things that we believe by our Christian conviction to be wrong. What it means is we have to make sure that we outdo ourselves in showing honor to those people. If you believe that somebody is struggling with sin, then have a conversation with them. Get to know them. Help them out. Maybe they would like help in this struggle. And try to be understanding and listen. Listen to what's going on in their lives. That's how you act honorably toward people. Don't sit back and snicker. Don't stare. Don't talk behind their back. Don't treat people like they're not human because they struggle with something. That is very inappropriate and very unchristian. However, we also have to make sure that we maintain the truth. And the truth is that we need to be looking out for certain realities. We need to be making sure that we're providing safe places for people to be. And that means safe on both sides of the conversation. I, for instance, as someone who has children, would not want my daughter going into the women's restroom and seeing a man standing there just because he says he identifies as a woman. Right? There has to be some kind of limit. We have to talk about what is reasonable, what is logical. So maybe that is having a restroom that is available to everyone. That's, unisex restrooms that are available to people. And if you want to do that and have people use the unisex restrooms where, it's a single stall where a door is locked and so it's one at a time and you don't have those issues, cool. I'm totally fine with that if that's the direction that you want to take this. But we have to think about this from all sides. That means think of it from the perspective of someone who identifies as transgendered, and think of it from the perspective of the general public. This is where a dialogue needs to happen. And right now, I just see a bunch of flame wars. I mean, people throwing out certain things and not being considerate and listening to other people. So I think maybe that's a great place to start. Being honorable toward each other. So what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Where do you think we should go? Do you plan on maybe boycotting Target or another business that allows for transgender people to use whatever bathroom they choose? Do you think that maybe the Christian community could do a better job of listening? Do you think that we're approaching this dialogue in the right way? Let us know in the comments down below here on YouTube, or you can also do it through social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, at ForthrightTV, hashtag ForthrightTV. What are your thoughts? We would love to sort of continue this dialogue and maybe have a fruitful conversation that would lead to some solutions. Also, too, let us know your thoughts on this format. If you think this is a good format, something we should continue, if you like this a little bit more kind of intimate, conversational, and personal, then we can definitely do this, and we'll use the set that we've been using for Forthright Currents for something else. I don't quite know what else, but we can use it for something else. Just let us know, and we'd love to hear from you on that. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Anthony Creedon, and as always, I'm just trying to be forthright. Wait. I think I might have figured this out. What if, instead of having like a men's restroom and a women's restroom, what if you had the restrooms marked by anatomical sex? So, like, you would have a penis room and a vagina room. So if somebody was like, hey, I feel like a woman. Okay. Do you have a penis? Yes. Well, then you go into the penis room. Really? Because I feel like a woman. That's fine. You can feel like a woman. Do you have a penis? Then go into the penis room. Seems pretty straightforward, right? I think that actually could work. Although, the iconography might be tough. I don't know how you'd make a sign for the penis room without making it directly pornographic. Maybe never mind.